What if I told you, you don't need him to say a single word to know he's turned on? Attraction doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts in the moment you walk into the room. In the way his body reacts before his mind can control it. In the way his breathing shifts. In the way his eyes lock onto you just a second too long. Men may try to hide it. They may act composed, calm, unbothered. But the body never lies. When a man is physically aroused by your presence, there are subtle, and sometimes powerful, signs his body gives away. Tiny shifts. Instinctive reactions. Changes in posture, tone, energy. And once you know what to look for, you'll never miss them again. In this video, we're breaking down the 5 undeniable signs he's physically turned on simply because you're there. No guessing. No mixed signals. Just psychology and real-world body language cues. Watch until the end, because the final sign is the one most women overlook, and it's the strongest indicator of all. If you want to understand male desire on a deeper level, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment chemistry below. Let's get into it. One of the strongest signs he's physically aroused by your presence is the immediate shift in his breathing and overall physical stillness. When you come near, it's subtle, but once you notice it, it becomes unmistakable. His body reacts before his mind has time to filter or control it. When attraction spikes suddenly, the nervous system activates. His heart rate increases slightly. Blood flow changes. Muscles tighten. Even if he's trying to appear calm, his body enters a heightened state of awareness. You might see his chest rise a little deeper than usual. His breathing may slow down and become heavier, or in some cases slightly uneven. It's not dramatic enough to be obvious to everyone in the room, but it's noticeable if you're paying attention. Sometimes he'll pause mid-sentence when you step closer. It's as if his body needs a second to recalibrate. That tiny pause is powerful. It shows that your proximity disrupted his internal rhythm. Physical arousal often creates a moment of internal freeze. Before the body settles into the sensation, you may also notice he becomes hyper, aware of space. If you're sitting near him, he may stop moving as much. If you brush against him, even accidentally, his reaction might be a fraction slower than normal, almost like he felt more than he expected. When a man is turned on, touch is amplified. Even small contact can send a stronger signal through his body. Another key detail is tension. Not aggressive tension, but contained tension. His shoulders might tighten slightly. His jaw could flex briefly. His hands might curl or press against his thighs as if he's grounding himself. These are unconscious stabilizing behaviors. When desire rises, the body tries to manage that energy. He may not even realize he's doing it. Pay attention to how he positions himself when you're close. If he angles his body toward you and becomes very still, that's focus. Arousal narrows attention. You become the center of his sensory field. Conversations around him fade slightly. His posture aligns toward you without effort. It's instinctive. His voice can shift too. Physical attraction often lowers a man's vocal tone. It becomes slightly deeper, slower, more deliberate. This happens because arousal affects breathing patterns and vocal cords. If he suddenly speaks more quietly when you're near, forcing you to lean in closer, that's often not accidental. Lower tones are subconsciously associated with intimacy and dominance. Eye behavior pairs strongly with this sign. When he's physically aroused, his gaze may lock onto you longer than usual. Not in a casual social way, but in a focused, almost studying way. He may glance at your lips briefly while you talk. He may blink less during direct eye contact. His eyes might darken slightly as his pupils adjust to heightened stimulation. Then, realizing he's staring, he may look away quickly to regain control. Another giveaway is micro adjustments. He might subtly shift in his seat, cross and uncross his legs, adjust his stance. These movements are often the body's way of handling physical stimulation discreetly. It's not random fidgeting, it's regulation. What makes this sign powerful is that it's difficult to fake and even harder to fully suppress. Words can lie, smiles can be polite. But breathing, muscle tension, and nervous system responses are automatic. When a man is physically aroused by your presence, His physiology changes in real time. You may feel the shift in energy before you consciously see it. The air between you feels thicker, quieter, charged. Conversations slow down. Movements become deliberate. There's a subtle pull, like gravity increasing in a small space. That sensation is often mutual awareness of attraction. Sometimes he'll compensate by acting extra controlled. He might clasp his hands together, lean back to create distance, or make a joke to break the intensity. These are management strategies. When desire rises unexpectedly, especially in social settings, many men instinctively try to appear composed, but that very effort to control himself is the clue. If he was relaxed before you arrived, and then suddenly becomes physically attentive, back straight, breathing deeper, eyes focused, that contrast is telling. It shows that your presence triggered a shift. The key thing to remember is that physical arousal isn't always loud or dramatic. Often it's contained, quiet, visible only in small physical cues that add up. The pause in his speech, the stillness in his body, the tension in his hands, the lowered tone of his voice, the intensity in his gaze. When you see several of these at once, it's rarely coincidence. And the most powerful part, he may not even fully realize how clearly his body is responding. Attraction bypasses logic. The nervous system reacts first. Awareness comes second. If you can learn to read breathing patterns, posture shifts, muscle tension, and eye focus together, you'll start recognizing the difference between polite interest and real physical arousal. One is casual. The other changes the atmosphere. When a man is physically turned on simply by your presence, the room doesn't just feel different. His body does. Another strong sign he's physically aroused by your presence is the way his eyes behave when he looks at you. Eyes are incredibly difficult to control, especially when desire is involved. While someone can manage their words and even their facial expressions, their gaze often reveals what's happening underneath. When a man is physically turned on, his eye contact changes in quality, not just duration. It becomes more focused, more intense, and slightly slower. Instead of quick, casual glances, he holds your gaze for an extra second longer than socially necessary. That extra second is important. It signals that he's not just looking at you, he's taking you in. You may notice that when you're speaking, he watches your lips briefly before returning to your eyes. This is a classic subconscious sign of physical attraction. The brain associates lips with intimacy and kissing, so when he's aroused, his attention naturally drifts there. He may not even realize he's doing it. His pupils can also dilate when he's attracted and stimulated. Pupil dilation is an automatic nervous system response tied to excitement and interest. While it's subtle and lighting affects it too, in consistent conditions you might notice his eyes appear darker or more open when he looks at you compared to when he looks at others. Another key detail is how his gaze travels. If he quickly scans from your eyes to your neckline, back to your eyes, and then down again in a controlled but noticeable way, that's often a sign of physical attraction rather than simple admiration. The difference is in the rhythm. It's slower, slightly lingering, almost like he's trying to memorize you. Sometimes when he realizes he's staring, he'll immediately look away. That quick break in eye contact after a long gaze is powerful. It shows awareness. He caught himself being too obvious. That small flicker of self-correction often means the attraction is strong enough that he momentarily lost control of his composure. There's also a softness that can appear in his expression. His eyebrows might relax. His eyelids may lower slightly. His gaze becomes less sharp and more absorbed. It's the difference between looking at someone and feeling someone. Physical arousal brings a warmer, heavier quality to eye contact. Blink rate can shift too. Sometimes men blink less when intensely focused on someone they're attracted to, as if they don't want to miss a detail. Other times, blinking may increase slightly if he's nervous from the intensity of his own reaction. Both can happen depending on personality. Pay attention to how he looks at you when you're not directly engaging him. If you catch him staring from across the room, and he quickly looks away when your eyes meet, That's often unfiltered attraction. When people think they're not being watched, their body language is most honest. Another powerful moment is silence paired with eye contact. If conversation pauses and he holds your gaze without immediately filling the silence, that tension can indicate heightened attraction. Physical arousal often creates a thick, charged pause, a moment where neither person moves quickly to break it. His facial muscles can subtly tighten as well. You might notice his jaw flex slightly or his lips press together briefly. That micro-expression can signal contained desire. Sometimes men press their lips together unconsciously when experiencing physical tension because it's a grounding reflex. If he mirrors your movements while maintaining eye contact, that's another layer. For example, if you tilt your head and he subtly mirrors it, or you lean slightly forward and he follows, his nervous system is sensing with yours. Attraction often creates subconscious mirroring behaviors. There's also something called the triangle gaze. This is when his eyes move from one of your eyes to the other, then briefly to your lips, then back up again. It's a pattern associated with romantic or physical interest rather than platonic attention. It signals that his brain is processing you as a potential intimate partner. The intensity may increase when you're physically closer. Up close, if his gaze feels heavier, slower, more locked in, that's because proximity amplifies attraction. Being within arm's reach increases sensory awareness. Your scent, your skin, your breathing, and his eyes respond accordingly. In some cases, he may overcompensate by avoiding eye contact entirely if he feels strongly aroused and doesn't trust himself to maintain composure. Avoidance can sometimes mean the opposite of disinterest. If he seems slightly flustered and looks away quickly when your eyes meet, especially while showing other attraction cues, that avoidance can signal he's trying to manage the intensity. The key difference between friendly eye contact and aroused eye contact is depth. Friendly looks are light and intermittent. Aroused looks feel heavier. They linger. They scan slowly. They hold. You'll often feel it before you logically analyze it. There's a moment where the air shifts because of the way he's looking at you. It feels more personal, more focused, less casual. Eyes are connected directly to emotional and physical centers in the brain. When a man is physically turned on by your presence, his gaze becomes a doorway into that internal reaction. He might not verbalize it. He might keep his posture controlled. But his eyes will usually tell you the truth long before he does. Another powerful sign he's physically aroused by your presence is the way he unconsciously tries to reduce the distance between you. Physical attraction creates a magnetic pull. Even when a man is attempting to act composed, his body often betrays a desire to be closer, just slightly closer than necessary. You may notice that when you're standing in a group, he gradually positions himself beside you. Not in an obvious way, but subtly. He angles his body toward yours. His feet point in your direction even when his torso is facing forward. Feet are one of the most honest indicators of interest because people rarely think to control them. When both feet are consistently angled toward you, it shows where his focus and often his desire is centered. If you're seated, he might lean in when you speak, even if the environment isn't loud. The lean isn't just about hearing you better. It's about entering your space. Physical arousal heightens sensory awareness. Being closer allows him to notice your scent, your skin tone, the subtle details of your expression. His nervous system wants proximity. Another subtle cue is how he reacts to small touches. If your hand brushes his arm and he doesn't pull away, instead, he holds that contact for a fraction longer, that pause is meaningful. Sometimes he might even create accidental contact. His knee might gently touch yours under a table and stay there. His arm might rest close enough that your shoulders lightly press together. These small, sustained contacts are often intentional extensions of attraction. Pay attention to how he responds when you invade his personal space slightly. If you step closer and he doesn't retreat, or better yet, if he leans in further, that's a strong sign. When someone is not attracted, their body instinctively maintains comfortable distance. When someone is aroused, the instinct shifts toward closeness. You may also see him adjust his position to align with you physically. For example, if you move to the other side of a room, he finds a reason to migrate in that direction. If you turn slightly, he mirrors the angle. It can feel like orbiting. He keeps entering your radius without making it obvious that he's doing so. His hands can reveal a lot here too. If he's physically aroused, he may find subtle ways to initiate touch that feel socially acceptable. A light touch on your lower back to guide you through a doorway. A gentle hand at your elbow, a brief squeeze of your shoulder when laughing. These touches are usually just long enough to create sensation, but short enough to appear casual. There's also tension in proximity. When a man is turned on and standing close to you, his body may become slightly rigid, not stiff in discomfort, but controlled. You might sense the contained energy. His movements slow down. His breathing becomes more deliberate. It's as if he's aware that even small shifts could increase the intensity between you. Another sign is how he reacts when someone else steps into the space between you. If his posture subtly tightens, or he quickly repositions himself back near you, that suggests he values that closeness. Physical arousal often brings a possessive undertone, not aggressive, but protective of shared space. When you sit side by side, watch for thigh or shoulder alignment. If he sits with his leg angled toward yours, rather than straight ahead, that's orientation. If your thighs lightly touch and he doesn't adjust away, it's often intentional tolerance of closeness because it feels good to him. Proximity also affects vocal tone. When he's closer, his voice may lower and soften. Speaking in a quieter tone naturally encourages you to lean in, which further reduces distance. This can create a small loop of mutual closeness that intensifies physical awareness. One of the most telling cues is hesitation when separating. If you step back and he delays stepping away, or when a conversation ends he lingers half a second before moving, that pause can reveal reluctance. Physical arousal often makes distance feel abrupt. The body wants the sensation to continue. Even in motion, attraction shows. When walking together, does he brush against you lightly? Does he match his stride to yours so your arms occasionally touch? That synchronization isn't random. It's subconscious alignment driven by interest. The difference between friendly closeness and aroused closeness lies in intention and consistency. Friendly proximity is occasional and situational. Aroused proximity repeats. It happens across different environments. He repeatedly finds reasons to be near you. You might feel the shift as warmth or subtle pressure in shared space. Conversations seem more charged when you're within arm's reach. Silence feels heavier but not uncomfortable, just full. Physical arousal doesn't always express itself loudly. Often it's contained in inches, in the narrowing of space, in the willingness to stay close, in the quiet extension of touch. When a man is physically turned on by your presence, distance feels unnatural to him. His body almost automatically keeps trying to close the gap. Another strong sign he's physically aroused by your presence is the noticeable change in his voice and speech patterns when he's around you. Attraction doesn't just affect posture and eye contact, it directly impacts breathing, vocal tone, rhythm, and even word choice. When a man is turned on, his breathing shifts first. Since the voice is controlled by airflow and vocal cords, any change in breathing naturally alters how he sounds. You might notice his tone becoming slightly deeper when he speaks to you. This isn't always intentional. A lower tone can happen automatically because arousal activates the nervous system and increases chest resonance. A deeper voice often signals both attraction and a subconscious desire to appear more masculine or dominant. Studies in social behavior consistently show that men lower their voices around someone they're attracted to. If his voice sounds noticeably different when he talks to you compared to when he talks to others, that contrast is meaningful. Slowing down his speech is another clue. When aroused, some men become more deliberate with their words. They pause slightly longer between sentences. Their responses feel more measured. This happens because part of his brain is managing internal stimulation while trying to stay composed externally. The slight delay is often his mind catching up with his body. On the other hand, some men react in the opposite way. They speak faster, laugh more, or stumble over their words. Physical attraction can create nervous energy. If he's usually smooth but suddenly trips over simple phrases or repeats himself around you, it can be a sign that your presence is affecting him physically and emotionally at the same time. Listen closely to volume changes. When he's near you, does his voice drop quieter so you have to lean in? Lower volume paired with proximity can be a subtle way of increasing intimacy. Speaking softly draws you closer, reducing physical space and heightening shared attention. It creates a private bubble even in a public setting. You may also notice a warmer tone. When someone is aroused, their voice often loses sharpness and becomes smoother. There's less abruptness. Even teasing may sound softer, slower, slightly heavier. That weight in tone often carries underlying desire. Breathiness is another sign. If you hear a faint exhale before he answers, or his words seem to ride on slightly deeper breaths, that can indicate heightened physical awareness. Arousal increases oxygen demand and heart rate, and subtle breath changes follow. Pay attention to how he says your name. When a man is physically attracted, he may say your name more often than necessary, and when he does, there can be a shift in tone, slower, more intentional. Saying your name becomes less functional and more sensory. It's a way of anchoring attention. Humor can change too. If he becomes more flirtatious, playful, or slightly suggestive compared to how he interacts with others, that shift in communication style can be tied to physical interest. Attraction often loosens filters just enough to allow more daring remarks, though still socially safe. Silences are revealing as well. If he pauses after you speak and just looks at you for a second before responding, that moment can signal that he's processing more than just your words. Physical attraction sometimes interrupts cognitive flow. He's feeling before he's thinking. Another subtle cue is throat movement. Swallowing slightly before speaking or clearing his throat when you step closer can signal nervous arousal. It's a physical reflex tied to tension and heightened awareness. You may also detect protective tone shifts. If someone else enters the conversation and his voice subtly changes, becoming firmer or more grounded, that can indicate territorial energy triggered by attraction. It's not aggressive, but there may be a subtle shift in how he positions himself verbally around you. What separates normal conversational variation from arousal-driven shifts is consistency. If these vocal changes happen repeatedly when you're near, deeper tone, slower rhythm, softer volume, breath changes, it's unlikely to be coincidence. Your presence becomes a stimulus. His nervous system responds, his breathing shifts, his vocal cords adjust, his speech pattern alters. He may not consciously decide to sound different around you. In fact, many men are unaware of these subtle changes. But attraction affects physiology first and intention second. When you combine vocal changes with other cues, prolonged eye contact, reduced physical distance, contained muscle tension, the pattern becomes clear. His body, including his voice, is reacting. And voice is powerful. It carries emotion. It reveals tension. It exposes desire in ways that words alone cannot hide. If you notice his tone drop, his speech slow, and his voice soften specifically around you, it's often because your presence is doing more to him than he's willing to admit out loud. Another powerful sign he's physically aroused by your presence is the subtle but noticeable tension in his hands and the way he manages them around you. Hands are deeply connected to nervous system responses. When attraction and physical stimulation rise, excess energy has to go somewhere, and it often shows up in small, controlled movements of the fingers, palms, or grip. You might notice that when you step closer, his hands become very still. Almost too still. He may clasp them together, interlock his fingers, or press his palms against his thighs as if grounding himself. That stillness isn't random. It can be a sign he's containing physical tension. Arousal creates energy, and sometimes the body responds by tightening rather than fidgeting. In other cases, the opposite happens. He might start adjusting things: his watch, his sleeves, his collar. These grooming gestures often increase around someone he's physically attracted to. While grooming can signal general interest, when paired with other signs like deep eye contact and close proximity, it often reflects heightened awareness of his own body. Watch for subtle clenching. His jaw might tighten briefly, but so can his hands. A slight curl of the fingers, a tightening grip on a glass, or pressing his thumb into his palm can indicate contained physical intensity. These are micro reactions, quick and easy to miss, but they tend to appear when he's trying to stay composed. Another revealing cue is how he reacts when you touch him. If your hand brushes his arm and his fingers flex slightly in response, that's often an instinctive physical reaction. When someone is aroused, even light touch feels amplified. The nervous system lights up faster, and the body reacts before logic steps in. You may also notice that his gestures slow down. Instead of animated, casual hand movements, his gestures become deliberate and controlled. Slower movements often reflect internal focus. He's aware of his proximity to you, aware of the energy between you, and that awareness changes how freely he moves. If he initiates touch, pay attention to duration and pressure. A hand placed on your lower back that lingers just a fraction longer than necessary. Fingers that gently rest at your waist instead of tapping and pulling away quickly. A squeeze that's slightly firmer than casual friendliness. Physical arousal can subtly increase both contact time and firmness. His palms might appear warmer than usual if you hold hands or touch briefly. Increased blood flow from arousal can create a noticeable warmth. It's a small detail, but combined with others, it adds to the picture. Another sign is how he positions his hands when seated near you. If his fingers hover close to yours on a table, almost touching but not quite, that hesitation can signal desire mixed with restraint. The space between your hands can feel charged. Sometimes he'll close that space slowly, testing the moment. You might also see him run his hand through his hair or along his jawline more often when you're around. These self-touch gestures can be subconscious responses to heightened physical awareness. It's the body discharging nervous energy. If he's standing close and his hands instinctively move toward your waist or lower back during a hug, rather than staying high on your shoulders, that positioning can signal stronger physical interest. The difference is subtle but meaningful. Lower placement often reflects deeper attraction. One of the most telling moments is when your touch makes him pause. If you rest your hand on his chest or arm, and he goes quiet for a second, breathing slightly heavier, fingers tightening before relaxing, that micro pause often reveals internal reaction. What separates normal friendliness from physical arousal is intensity and consistency. Friendly gestures are light and brief. Aroused gestures carry weight, they linger. They feel grounded rather than casual. Hands reveal tension because they're hard to fully control under emotional or physical stimulation. When a man is physically turned on by your presence, that contained energy needs management. Sometimes he stills it. Sometimes he channels it into small movements. Sometimes he initiates subtle contact to feel that connection more directly. Combined with deeper voice, prolonged eye contact, reduced distance, and slower breathing, changes in his hands complete the pattern. They show that attraction isn't just mental, it's physical. It's circulating through his body, creating small but undeniable shifts. When you see his fingers tighten, linger, hover, or ground themselves whenever you're close, it's often because your presence isn't neutral to him. It's stimulating. Physical attraction is rarely announced out loud. Most of the time, it shows up quietly in breath changes,